Hi everybody, Sophia here from Highland Birth and Beyond, and today I'm joined by the lovely Rebecca. Rebecca has been one of my prenatal yoga students, and then once her baby was born, we had a great time together with baby massage and mum and baby yoga. So today Rebecca's going to talk to you all about her experience of birth and how when it very first started, just before she was due to give birth to her baby daughter, we discovered that her baby was not quite in the position that we thought she was going to be in. So hi Rebecca, how are you?
Hiya, good to be here.
How are you today?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. So we were all set, weren't we? Used to turn up to prenatal yoga, everything's great, my baby's in the best possible position. And then one day, tell us about it.
Yeah, so I'd had a really straightforward pregnancy, no kind of issues, no worries with gestational diabetes or preeclampsia or anything like that. It was all textbook, all going fine. I was really active during my pregnancy. And then I got to 36 weeks and I had my midwife appointment. So I think it was 36 plus 1. It was like a day after I turned 36 weeks. And I went to midwife and it was all fine. And we talked through my birth plan and we talked about how I've been doing hypnobirthing and we wanted to have a water birth and be at the birthing centre and kind of went through all the things and, pain management and all that stuff. And I sort of had a really set plan. And then that afternoon I went home and I was working from home. And I got really bad back pain. And I'm someone who gets back pain quite a lot. And I was sat on my exercise ball, trying to sort of get myself in a comfortable position, really, really struggling. And then by the time it got to about 9 o'clock that evening, I was going to try to get ready for bed. I was just like, something's just not right. I just don't I was worried about reduced movements, but it wasn't that I couldn't feel the baby. It was that because I was in pain and I was thinking so much about the fact I was in pain, I wasn't concentrating on kind of the kicks and the movement. And so I was really worried. And so I just thought, right, rather than having an evening where, I'm really stressing myself and getting myself worked up, I phoned up the maternity assessment centre and I said that I'm a bit worried about reduced movements. And they said, come in straight away, no issues there. Much rather that they, checked everything out than for me to just worry. And definitely if you are worried about reduced movements at any point, just phone up the assessment centre because they are brilliant. So we trekked down to the hospital and they put me on the monitor and checked the baby's heartbeat, and the midwife sort of did it and it was all fine. And then she said, I just want to get another a colleague just to come and check the position of the baby. She's like, because I'm not quite sure, I think she's head down, but I just want to get someone else to check. So they another midwife came in, she did the palpating and she said, she's like, well, I think the baby's head down, but I wouldn't bet my house on it. So we'd just like to get if there's someone available to do a scan, we just want to do a scan before you go home so that we're not sending you home as an undiagnosed breech, because that would be not very good. So we'd rather just have you scanned. So it was sort of about 11 o'clock at night, took me into this little scan room that they had, and a registrar came down, did the scan, put me on the ultrasound immediately, just went, yep, baby's head up, her head's up by your chest. And so she was in a frank breech position. So her head was up here, her bum was down by my pelvis, and then her feet were kind of up on the other side of my chest, which was really confusing because I could feel kicks as if she was head down. It was my first pregnancy. I didn't know anything different, so it definitely felt like she was in the right position, and everyone had told me that she was in the right position. So I remember the registrar saying, you've got a couple of options. You need to think about it. Go away, have a look at the guidance on the Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and have a think about what you want to do. And I just remember going home as we were driving back from the hospital, and just being in tears and absolutely devastated, like, why is this happening? And then the next day, similar, you know, I stayed home from work, and I just remember being, you know, spent the whole day feeling really, really upset and just, why has this happened? You know, why is it me? What's wrong with me? Is there something wrong with my baby? Why is my baby not in a position that she should be in? And then I sort of had that going on, but then at the same time, I was also Googling like spinning babies and you know, trying to find all these different YouTube videos and things about how you can get your baby to turn. And then I sort of started down this path of just trying to do everything I could to try and get my baby to turn.
And that had quite a few interesting things in it, didn't it? It had a few methods that people might like to know about.
Yes. Yeah. So, oh gosh, there's so many, like, there is so much advice if you go on Google. It's like, and YouTube videos. I was watching these like American mums who'd had like 5 children and then were like, their baby was breech, and these were all the things they were doing. So what did I do? So inversions. So putting my legs up against the wall and laying on the floor with my legs up against the wall. One quite a lot I was doing. It's like they say to do it like several times a day. To kneel on like the top step of our stairs with my hands on like a step below, so that my bum was in the air, to try and like encourage the baby to move forward and spin. Putting an ice pack sort of on where the baby's head was, and then sitting in like a warm bath or having a hot water bottle down the bottom to try and encourage the baby to move away from the cold and move head down. Another one that I didn't really do, but I know a lot of people say about doing it, is like getting your phone and having music playing and putting it sort of by your pelvis so that the noise and the vibration encourages the baby to turn. So I just sort of spent my evenings just like, you know, my husband would be watching TV and I'd be laying on the floor with my feet on the sofa watching videos of these random American women saying, this is what you should do to try and get your baby to turn.
I think out of all of those, I think the first one where you're kneeling on the top step with your hands on the second step, I think I'd be a lot more comfortable with that if you were kneeling on something on the floor with your hands lower down, as opposed to facing down a flight of steps. That's like, ooh. So basically for a good few days, you had every kind of evening like a circus audition. It's like, what else can I do now to try to make a difference? Neil, your husband's probably wandering around the house going, where's my wife? Oh, there she is. Oh, no, there she is.
Yeah, and they say to do it like, you should be doing this several times a day. And so it was like all this kind of pressure to suddenly be doing these, you know, crazy movements and getting up and like trying to, you know, encourage the baby to move in any way that I could.
Just a full-on mission, wasn't it? And then there was a kind of a quietness, if you like, that settled over you, that actually she just was in this position, and then you needed to think about what was going to come next, wasn't there?
Yeah, and so the thing that really helped me with that was actually going for the ECV. So that's I can never say it. And external cephalic version. That's it.
Yeah.
Get my words mixed up there. So that's when they try and manually move the baby. So the day after I found out she was breech, they said, do you want to come in and have an ECV to try and move the baby? And it was something that I'd read about, and I felt quite happy that that was something that I wanted to do. So I sort of about a week later went into the hospital, and they give you injection. Well, first they monitor the baby just to check, sort of get a baseline of heartbeat, check that the baby's okay, and then they give you an injection in your tummy to just relax all the muscles, and then you sort of have to wait for that to take effect. It's like, you think it's going to be quick, but like all these things, there's a lot of sitting around. And then they take you into a scan room, and so there's a consultant who did the ECV for me. So it's like you lay on the bed like you would a scan, but then they tip you sort of backwards, so your legs are in the air and your head's down low.
Which you're quite used to anyway by this point. Been your pastime for the last 24 hours.
Again, you know, it's clearly that is the way that you create more space for the baby to move, as being in that position. So I suppose that makes sense. And then they use the ultrasound to sort of check where the baby is, and then try and move the baby, which is, it's like having a really hard massage on your stomach, like on your tummy, which, like, I'd read a lot of people had said it's really painful, and I didn't find it painful. I definitely found it uncomfortable. Like, it's not a nice sensation.
You're not planning another one just for the sake of it.
Yeah, and definitely, you know, I mean, I wasn't like really bruised afterwards, but you know, you do get a little bit of bruising because it is, you know, someone pushing really hard to try and push the baby round. You know, it's not sort of, you know, they don't do it in a way that's unsafe, but they are, you know, having to kind of push through all your tummy muscles and everything to try and get that pressure on the baby to help them to move. So during that, I did the 4/8 breathing that I'd learned during hypnobirthing, which I found really, really helpful. And also when we were doing the yoga classes, we did a lot of visualizations, which I've never been very good at visualizations, but I have to say, having done those weekly classes and doing it on a regular basis, it really did help me to kind of go, right, I'm going to go to my sort of relaxed space and just focus on my breathing. And I did that sort of whilst the consultant was doing the ECV. And I remember her sort of, she tried to speak to me and I was like, don't speak to me. I just need to like zone out. And she sort of said afterwards, she's like, I was surprised just how kind of calm you stayed through that. She's like, because I was putting quite a lot of pressure on, and we did do it, you know, had a couple goes. But it wasn't, so when they did that, I mean, the consultant had said at the start, the likelihood of the baby turning was quite low, because she was in a frank breech position, which is sort of the hardest position to turn because it's got to kind of go all the way around. Me being a first-time mum, everything was kind of quite tight. And then because I was 37 weeks at that point, there wasn't a lot of space anyway. So she sort of said, you know, there wasn't a high likelihood of the baby moving. But sort of frustratingly, she got halfway. She got to the point where the consultant was like, well, if she was going to turn, she would have just flipped by now. Like, she's gone so far and she's just, something is stopping her. And she's like, I don't know what that is. It might be that, you know, if you have a C-section, I'll, you know, perform the C-section and see that actually it's because there's a short umbilical cord, or, you know, there's something that's kind of stopping her, but there's nothing that she could see on the scan. So I say, once I had that and I've sort of gone, right, I've tried everything, I kind of then went, okay, I'm okay with this. I know that I'm probably going to have a C-section, and I'm kind of, you know, if my baby wants to be in this position, we've tried everything we can. She obviously doesn't really want to move any further. So I'll just, you know, accept it. And then after the, so once they've sort of done the, you know, hopefully moved the baby, if they haven't, in my case, you still have to go back to the assessment unit, and they've monitored the baby's heartbeat again, just to check that the baby, there's nothing, the baby isn't in distress in any way, because one of the risks of an ECV is that you could end up having a C-section. And because I'd prepared myself for that possibility, it meant that I was in a much more kind of accepting place around having a C-section. But yeah, when I went back on the ward, they were a bit worried about her movements and her heartbeat. And then we sort of sat there for ages, and then they said, oh, well, actually, you haven't eaten anything because you couldn't eat before the ECV. You're supposed to leave 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it's now coming up to sort of 12:30. Maybe you should go get some, go get some food, go chill out, and then come back and we'll monitor the baby again. And as soon as I did that and came back, they were like, yeah, everything's fine. So, yeah, definitely. I think I got myself a little bit worried at that point. But then as soon as I sort of went out the assessment centre and went and went and got a drink and went and got something to eat, I was like, yeah, okay, this is all fine.
Well, a lot has happened really over a period of 24 hours, hasn't it? You've just been at home having a completely normal day, had a bit of backache, suddenly discovered that your baby, who you'd been told the whole way through was, or certainly felt like she was presenting in a good position for birth. And then suddenly everything's changed. Then you're upside down, inside out, topsy-turvy, heat packs, cool packs, husband thinking, my wife's lost the plot. And then, as you say, you go for the ECV, and then you experience the ECV, use your hypnobirthing techniques, manage to keep yourself calm, and then, nothing has changed at that point. If somebody else was going for an ECV, what kind of advice, if you've got any advice for them, what would you say?
Definitely do the 4-8 breathing. I mean, the thing that it's really difficult because if you're like me, you really want it to go right. So there's kind of all this pressure that you like really determined that this is going to work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the best thing you can do is relax. so that's not really necessarily two things that go together. So certainly all of the things that you learn in hypnobirthing about calming yourself down and relaxing and getting that kind of sort of peaceful space and in the right place where you are relaxed, that definitely helps. And as I say, I didn't find the ECV painful. It was uncomfortable, but I think that was because I was I was breathing a lot. I was getting a lot of oxygen into my muscles, and I was trying to stay as calm as possible. I think if I'd been tense, it would have made it much less likely to succeed, and also more likely to be painful. So yeah, definitely applying the hypnobirthing does make a real difference.
And I use the hypnobirth breathing for everything. Go to the dentist, open wide, just a second. Okay. Yeah. So just taking that time. And for anybody who doesn't know the 4-8 breath, then you simply breathe in through your nose to a count of 4, and then you exhale generally through the mouth with really soft lips to a long, slow exhale towards 8. You might not get to 8 to start with if you haven't done it before, so you can just exhale longer than 4. So in through your nose to 4, and exhale through your mouth for longer than 4, ideally up towards 8. But it's a great breath. I love to do it. It's one of the main ones actually that's used in yoga for anxiety and for overcoming fears, all those kind of things. It's a great one for people to use whether you're pregnant or not pregnant. So no more stressful traffic jams. Just sit there doing your relaxing breathing. Everything works wonders. Rebecca, that's brilliant on the ECV and everything. I think that will really help people who are in that position or who are considering whether or not to have one or just go straight and decide for a section. And also just to help people have an understanding of what that feels like. And I think a really firm sports massage. So I'm questioning your sports massage therapist. A really strong, powerful sports massage is probably a really great explanation of it. Is there anything else that you would like to add just now on that?
No, I don't think. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it, that like you're not used to. I don't think anyone ever has like a massage on their tummies. It's a bit.
An abdominal massage is generally quite gentle, so it's more like a colonic.
Yeah, but I suppose the other thing that I would say is, with all things in pregnancy, it's about making your choices. So don't if your baby's breech, if you find yourself in that position, you don't have to have an ECV. If you read about it and you decide that's not for me, then you don't have to do it. No one should make you feel like you have to have it.
Yeah.
And equally, if you decide that you do want to have one, but you're a little bit worried about it, then firstly, don't be worried, because it's a perfectly normal procedure. I think I'd got myself in this kind of mindset, which I think it actually was a good thing for me, that I'd read. So I think I can't remember the statistic. It's something like, I want to say 1 in 100, something like that, that is the chances of having to have a C-section as a result of the ECV. So either it triggers labour, or
Baby gets distressed.
in any way worried about the baby, that suggested you have a C-section. So that, like, there is that risk, which I think when you read it, because it's sort of more common than, I suppose, other statistics where you're looking, it'll be like 1 in a million kind of thing. It's like, it is a reasonable percentage, but again, it's thinking about that, the brain. So should you be, I can't remember now, it's been so long since I've done it, no better thing, but
benefits, risks, alternatives. Do instinct, nothing, and smile.
Yes. So all of that, and say don't be scared, because chances are you won't have to have a C-section. But if you do have to have a C-section, it's not the end of the world. As long as you know that that's something that could happen, then you'll be going into it in a very kind of positive frame of mind. And at the end of the day, it's about feeling in control of your options and your choices. So yeah, definitely don't be worried about having an ECV.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, that's probably as much as we want to talk about the ECV side of it. And we are going to come back and do a part 2, which will be all about your C-section experience, and also, as part of your C-section experience, how it felt for you to be letting go of that dream of the idyllic kind of water birth that you'd spent so long imagining was going to be the way that Rosamund entered the world, and how you coped with that, as well as moving into the C-section part. So thank you so much for that today. I will pop down some details underneath as to how you can get in touch with Rebecca if you want to chat to her more, or if you want to follow her, because Rebecca's up to all sorts of amazing stuff, which we'll tell you about in the next one, in the C-section one. So thank you so much. Talk to you soon. Lots of love. Bye bye.